Yeah.
السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته.
وعليكم السلام ورحمة الله وبركاته. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم والحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على رسوله الكريم. ربنا ظلمنا أنفسنا وإن لم تغفر لنا وترحمنا لنكونن من الخاسرين. سبحانك لا علم لنا إلا ما علمتنا إنك أنت العليم الحكيم. وتب علينا يا مولانا إنك أنت التواب الرحيم. اللهم نور قلوبنا بمعرفتك واشرح صدورنا بنور كتابك وسنة نبيك واحفظنا أن زلل وخطأ في بيان مرادك. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. Am I coming through clearly?
الجملة.
Okay. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. So inshallah we're going to do a recap of the kitab. But I thought that before we do the recap, we can do a brief history of Usool. The Usool al-Fuqaha. How did it come to be in this particular form that we have it today? Inshallah, hopefully that will give us an understanding, a better understanding of the kitab itself and its place, a historical place in our madhab. So inshallah, we'll try and finish the history today if possible and go on to the recap tomorrow, inshallah. May Allah make it beneficial, inshallah, and make it a means of greater understanding, inshallah.
Sure.
So like with any science, as we know, the science didn't exist in a formal in the formal manner that we find it today. So even the basic sciences like Nahwa and Sarf, obviously the Sahaba and the ulama that came thereafter, they knew these sciences, but they knew it naturally. To them it came naturally. They spoke the language, observing all the etiquettes of Nahwa, Sarf, and Balagha, and so on and so forth. It was only later on when the need arose, as more and more foreigners or non-Arab speaking people came into the deen, alhamdulillah ta'ala, that the need arose to teach them how to speak the language correctly. So that then, in this way, they looked into the language, and for example, they saw that al-fa'il marfu, al-maf'ul mansub, and so on and so forth. So from the spoken word, the practical word, they did use the various laws of Nahwa and Sarf. Okay, so the language existed first, and then from there, the laws were deduced when the need arose. So in the same way, the Usool al-Fiqh always existed in the time of the Sahaba right through, but the scholars had no need to teach it as a formal subject. It was something that they just knew, and they taught their students, and it passed on like that from generation to generation, shafahatan, a word of mouth by the suhbat of the teacher, of the ustad, of the shaykh. The students also automatically then picked up these various qawaid and usul with regards to this particular subject as well. So generally, not always, but generally, a science would go through about 4 stages. One was ta'sil. I strongly suggest that you take notes, inshallah, if possible. One was ta'sil, from the word usul. One was where the usul were formulated formally. Right? In the various sciences, this happened in different ways.
Well,
Then the
just
next,
repeat that, Maf.
ta'sil, first phase was normally ta'sil, right, where the
Sure.
laws were formulated, the usul were formulated by the forerunners and the first ulama. Thereafter was tadween. Tadween means to compile these various usul that was scattered about. And they picked up some usul here, some usul here, it was scattered, and so to bring it all together. But they would bring it together in a manner that it wasn't really, how can you say, um, wasn't that, it was not muhaddab. It was not done in a, what's the word I'm looking for? In a clear format as we have it. They just kept it all also together, tadween. Okay. Then the
Yeah.
third step was tasneef, to write it down. And to write down whatever they knew with regards to their subject, in whatever manner they would write it out, in the manner that they felt was best, they would write it down. Okay, so here also the writing wasn't clear and precise and step by step type of thing, user friendly. Understand? That's in the last, the tahdib, that people took these writings, the ulama which came thereafter, because now everything had been set down, more or less decided, everything was more or less agreed upon. There might have still been a few masalik not agreed upon, like we have in Nahwa, like we have in Sarf. Understand? But what they did was, they now, each of those authors that came afterwards in this last phase, they made tahdib of the subject. They formulated a precise step-by-step how to go. So for example, for example, with regards to Sarf, they may start with a different abwab first, and from the abwab you go on to uh, how the bab is formulated, Maldi, Mudari, and so on and so forth. So they set about a step-by-step approach in a clear-cut, concise manner, how that particular subject will work. So ta'sil, tadween, tasnif, and tahnif. Understood that? Right.
Yeah.
So with regards to I remember I told you in the beginning of Usool SHAASHI, there are two schools of thought, or two schools rather, not two schools with regard to Usool al-Fiqh. One is the Usool al-Fuqaha, which is the Ahnaf, and the other is the Usool al-Mutakallimin, which are the other three madhahib. The Usul al-Mutakallimin is very easy because Imam Shafi'i himself wrote his methodology. And he wrote down his methodology of how he extracted or what usul he was applying to derive masail in his kitabs, Kitab al-Hujjah, Kitab al and so on and so forth. He wrote several kitabs. So in there, he clearly set out how he went about, what his methodology was. So for those ulama, it was pretty simple. All they had to do was take the Imam, who is the founder of the fiqh and the usul fiqh, and build upon that and develop it from there, which is exactly what was done. And this applies to all three because all three madhabs follow one set of usul. Okay.
Sure.
For the Ahnaf, it wasn't so easy because the Ahnaf didn't go about formulating their own usul and then deriving masail from the usul, but rather they looked at their founding fathers and then derived their usul from the masail which they left, from the fiqh which they left behind. Okay, I'll get back to that later. So they looked at the masail of Imam Abu Hanifa, Imam Yusuf, and Muhammad, and from there they said, oh, okay, Imam Hanifa in this particular case, or in all these instances, this seems to be his asal. In this masala, and in this masala, Imam Muhammad disagrees with him, or Imam Yusuf disagrees with him, and so on and so forth. So for the Ahnaf, it was a more lengthier, longer process because the founding fathers, except for a few masail, they didn't actually leave behind or tell us exactly what usuls they were applying, as is the case of Imam Shafi radiallahu anhu wa anhum wa kullum ajma'in. Okay, so it has had to be deduced from the kutubs of Imam Abu Hanifa, which is written down by Imam Muhammad Ahmad alayhi, who was the youngest student of Imam Hanifa. He was about 21 or so only. Imagine if a kid at that age already was about 21 or so, Imam Hanifa passed away. So the founding fathers of our Usul is Imam Hanifa, Imam Yusuf, and Imam Muhammad. But none of them, except for a very few Masail, a handful of Masail, Usul, we are unaware of what the entire body was because they didn't leave behind any Usul al-Fiqh writing. Now it is said that Imam Shafi rahmatullah was the first person to write down Usul al-Fiqh, to sort of to start the subject in writing, to make tadween or tasneef of this particular subject, to take the first step in writing it down. Imam Shafi rahmatullah was the first person to do so. This is generally what is said. However, there is one person in from the Ahnaf who is also known for sure. It is said that Imam Muhammad rahmatullah wrote a kitab, but there's no yaqeen in that. We cannot verify that. But for sure, it's verified. His student, Imam Muhammad rahmatullah, student by the name of Isa ibn Abban. Imam Isa ibn Abban rahmatullah, and he is mentioned in the kitab Usool SHAASHI once or twice.
والملائكة وقضي الأمر وإلى الله ترجع الأمور.
He wrote down the Usul al-Fiqh of our madhab, and his kitab name is Kitab al-Hijaj. Kitab al-Hijaj, and some say Kitab al-Hujjah. Okay? Now what's interesting is that he was a contemporary of Imam Shafi'i, rahmatullahi alayhi. They were both studying.
Can I just repeat the name of?
Which part?
The name of the Imam?
Imam Isa ibn Abban. Isa ibn Abban. Yeah. Or the Alif Hamza, Abban, Alif Hamza, Alif Nun. So he was a contemporary of Imam Shafi'i. They were both studying at the same time under Imam Muhammad rahmatullahi. And Imam Muhammad rahmatullahi was a great influence in Imam Shafi'i's fiqh studies. Because prior to that, Imam Shafi'i was following the methodology of the Muhaddithun, like Imam Malik rahmatullahi and so forth, because he understood under Imam Malik as well. But his whole perception of fiqh and usul fiqh changed when he came to Iraq and started under Imam Muhammad. So he and Isa ibn Abban used to have great amount of debates, and some say he actually left Iraq because of Isa ibn Abban, because they were arguing too much and debating too much. So he left there and he went to Egypt. So we know definitely that Isa ibn Abban also wrote a kitab on usul fiqh, but the kitab is lost. We don't know his whereabouts. So it is possible that he was also either he wrote the kitab before Imam Shafi, or more or less at the same time. Wallah, Allah knows best. Right. So anyway, that's an interesting point to keep in mind. Now, thereafter, three main centers of usul developed. With regards to usul, three main centers came about. One is Iraq, which is the cradle of the Hanafi madhab. Second was Samarkand, and the third was Bukhara. So Iraq, Samarkand, and Bukhara. There were other centers of fiqh, like Egypt, for example. Imam Tahawi was there, but it didn't become well known. It didn't develop into like one of the main centers. And there were other Balkh also. Balkh is another example. A lot of the fuqaha, and it came from the Hanafi of fuqaha, but it didn't become like a popular center where people would go and study as such. So these are the three main centers, not to say that there weren't others as well, of less popularity. Right. Now, although Imam Isa ibn Abban's book was lost, the earlier scholars did record quite a bit from there, especially Imam Jassas, Imam Abu Bakr al-Jassas, rahmatullahi. You might have heard his name, he's very famous. He wrote a very popular kitab, Ahkam al-Quran also, where he took all the ayat of Ahkam only and made tafsir of it according to the Hanafi madhab with his dalail and arguments and counter arguments and jawabat and so on and so forth, Ahkam al-Quran. Imam Jassas passed away in 370 Hijrah. 370 Hijrah. So that gives you an idea, more or less. He came about maybe just less than a century after Imam Muhammad, and then passed on. Okay. So he wrote a kitab on Usool, Al-Fusul fil Usool, which today can be found in 2 or 3 very thick volumes. So in there he records all the opinions of Imam Isa ibn Abban, sometimes going into pages. Like when I say pages, I mean sometimes up to 10, 12 pages quotes from that kitab. So in this way, the legacy of Isa ibn Abban has survived, if not in totality, then to quite a great extent. However, the sad thing is that nobody has really done any khidmah to this particular kitab. Tahqiq has been made with regards to printing it, and it is printed. It's popular as well, but very few people have made any tahqiq on research and written footnotes and so on and so forth. I said Imam Kawthi rahmatullahi was the teacher of Imam Abu Ghudda, Sheikh Abu Ghudda. He used to emphasize on Sheikh Imam Abu Ghudda to do something about that. Unfortunately, he wasn't able to get to the kitab and make any khidmah to the kitab. Sheikh Abu Fatah Abu Ghudda is one famous student nowadays, is Sheikh Awama. You probably heard of Sheikh Awama. He's in Turkey at the moment, also from Sham. He is one of the famous students of Sheikh Abdul Fattah Abu Ghudda. Anyway, khair. So that kitab is there, Al-Fusul fil Usul, but it hasn't been, no khidmah has been made of the kitab. Anyway, so Imam Isa ibn Abban's legacy survived to some extent in that kitab. Right, now with regards to the 3 centers coming to Iraq, there the famous Usuli there is Karhi. Imam Karhi rahmatullahi. I wasn't able to get the date of when he was passed away, but anyway. Yeah, but his book is also lost. Right, Imam Karhi wrote a kitab on Usul al-Fiqh, but his kitab is also lost. Imam Karhi is the Ustad of Imam Abu Bakr Jassas, whom I just mentioned now. Okay, so he also apparently recorded from Isa ibn Abban as well, even though he disagreed with many of his masail, then he disagreed with many of the usul, but this is recorded. And Imam Bakr Jassas, his student, made talkhis of Karhi, Imam Karhi rahmatullahi's kitab as well. So he got in Al-Fusul fil Usul of Jassas rahmatullahi, you find both Isa ibn Abban's views as well as Karhi's views and his differing opinion. Okay, so that is the famous scholar from Iraq. Unfortunately, the kitab didn't survive. Then in the second center, Samarkand, we got 2 very famous ulama there, 2 very famous imams. One is Abu Mansur Maturidi. This man, Muhammad ibn Muhammad Maturidi, is the same Maturidi that we as Ahnaf generally follow in our Aqaid. We are Maturidis. In Aqaid, we follow the Maturidi madhab. There are 2 famous schools in Aqaid, Maturidi and Ash'ari. So generally, the Ahnaf follow Maturidis illa masha'Allah. They follow this particular scholar. So he also has a book on Usul al-Fiqh as well. Which is called Ma'akhid al-Shara'i. Ma'akhid al-Shara'i. He passed away in 333, very easy. 333 Hijrah. Right? Imam Abu Mansur al-Maturidi, Imam al-Kalam, passed away in 333. Ma'akhid al-Shara'i was the name of his kitab, unfortunately also lost. And no trace of that kitab as well. And the second famous person from Samarkand is Alauddin. Alauddin Samarkandi rahmatullahi alayhi. He passed away in 539 Hijrah. 539 Hijrah. Alauddin Samarkandi, very interesting. He wrote a kitab in fiqh called Tuhfatul Ulama. And one of his students wrote a sharah, a commentary on that. which he named Bada'i Sana'i, which is also very famous along with Shami. The Muftis also studied this kitab, Bada'i Sana'i. The Ustad was so impressed with the kitab that he got him married to his daughter Fatima, rahmatullahi. She was also an imam in her own right. She was so popular and such a faqihah that the people would not accept the fatwa of her husband, Kasani, rahmatullahi. They wouldn't accept his fatwa unless she signed it as well. So she had to state her approval of his fatwa and sign it as well. Then only would the people in that particular place accept his fatwa. So can you imagine what kind of faqihah she was? Anyway, that's just by the way. So I mention this because you'll hear this name, you'll hear this kitab somewhere along the line. So Alauddin Samarkandi, he also wrote a kitab with regards to fiqh. Alhamdulillah, to some extent it survived. And to some extent that kitab survived. But this kitab didn't become a how can you say, an accepted resource for Usool al-Fiqh. The ulama didn't really take it and accept it as an authority for the Hanafi madhab in Usool al-Fiqh. This honor belongs to Bukhara. The ulama of Bukhara, they had the greatest influence on Usool al-Fiqh, and their works were more accepted than anybody else. In Bukhara, the biggest name there was, and his name comes twice in Usool SHAASHI, Qadi Abu Zayd ad-Dabusi. Qadi Abu Zayd ad-Dabusi, it came now at the end as well of the kitab. So he, you can say, set the first brick in this building of the Usul al-Fiqh as we know it today. So Qadi Abu Zayd ad-Dabusi, he passed away in 430 Hijrah. He wrote 2 or 3 kitabs. The famous one is Taqweemul Adillah. Taqweemul Adillah. You following so far? Okay, so in Bukhara, Qadi Abu Zayd ad-Dabusi, rahmatullahi, his kitab's name is Taqweemul Adillah. There is a second kitab, but this is the main one. At 430 Hijri, passed away. So Qadi Abu Zayd was the first person who started this whole division of 4. You know, like how we have in Usool SHAASHI as well. Understand the 4 types. When it comes to Quran Kareem, they are divided into 4 categories. And each of the 4 categories has 4 types: khas, mushtarak, ma'awwal, and so on and so forth. Okay, so he was the first one who started this murabba, this division of dividing things into 4. But as normally happens when it comes to tasneef, when it comes to writing things down, and because this was sort of the first initial stages of it, he collected everything in his kitab. So it wasn't very set out. It wasn't mu'adhab. Understand? It wasn't formulated. It wasn't set out very well. And he recorded other stuff as well. Aqaid sometimes, nasiha sometimes, fiqh sometimes. Understand? So everything was all sort of mixed up, you could say. But he started this first thing. And the second great feature about this kitab is that he recorded everything that came before. He had access to the Samarkand ulama. He had access to the workings of the Iraqi ulama as well. Some of them were even his asatida or the students of his asatida, or his asatida or students of those imams. So he had a full overview of everything that came before him from the other 2 centers as well. And he recorded their views also, and he recorded what he felt as well. Okay? So in this way, this kitab, the ulama of the time, their eyes fell into this kitab. And this now became an authority. And this led to further khidmah on this particular kitab. In fact, everything which came thereafter, the seed of it was Qadi Abu Zayd Abu Dabusi. You will definitely find He's influenced all the kutub that came thereafter, including Usool SHAASHI. Okay, so two famous ulama did the most khidmah and had the most influence were Imam Sarakhsi. You probably heard of Usool Sarakhsi. Imam Sarakhsi passed away 483 Hijrah. And the other one, which is more popular, is Fakhrul Islam al-Bazdawi. Fakhrul Islam Bazdawi, 482 Hijrah. He passed away 482. Fakhrul Islam Bazdawi is a ustad of Imam Sarakhsi. So both ustad and student, both had the same idea that this kitab is very valuable, let's do some work on it. However, they differed in their approach. Imam Fakhrul Islam Bazdawi, he rearranged the kitab, took out all the unnecessary discussions, the ilmul kalam and aqaid and all those things. And he gave some tartib to the kitab, some proper tartib to the kitab. Okay, Fakhrul Islam Bazdawi. And he started from this idea of starting from Kitabullah, going on to Sunnah, then Ijma' and then Qiyas. And so he put this tartib down. So start from the Kitab, and when he came to Khas, he discussed Amr and the Khas, and so on and so forth. Everybody before him, some of the Kitab started at Amr, like Imam Sarakhsi starts with Amr. His Kitab starts with Amr. And so you don't actually know where that Amr comes about, where does it fall in, what is it related to. So Imam Fakhrul Islam Bazdawi is the one that basically set up the tartib as we know it today, and as is found in most of the kutub of Usool al-Fiqh, including Usool SHAASHI. That is why they said Usool SHAASHI must have come, the author, whoever he was, came after this particular period, because he follows Fakhrul Islam Bazdawi to the T. Understand? He follows him, his same tartib and same examples and everything. Okay? So these two Imams, they had the greatest influence there. This was the turning point, you could say, in the Hanafi Usul history, of Qadi Abu Zayd al-Dabusi and the work that followed thereafter. You follow that?
Yeah.
Okay, I just want to discuss one more thing, inshallah, which we don't have time for now, it's tomorrow. The famous comment is on Bazdawi and how it developed from the... We won't done much, inshallah, maybe 5-10 minutes, and then we go on to the recap. Because the most famous commentary, or the most famous... Because after this, everybody just made talkhis or sharah, tashrih. Okay? Talkhis or sharah of Fakhruddin Bazdawi's kitab. And the most famous talkhis, the most famous talkhis means to write a kitab in a concise manner, so to abbreviate the kitab. The most famous one is Al-Manar, like Imam Nasafi, who was also an Imam in Aqaid. Imam Nasafi, you probably heard of his name, very famous. Imam Nasafi Al-Manar is very famous. So Nur al-Anwar and all these different kitabs that come from these, all commentaries of Fakhruddin Bazdawi's kitab, Talkhis of which was made by Imam Nasafi rahmatullah, is called Al-Manar. Okay, so that's basically where Usool SHAASHI name also fit in as well. Understood that?
Yeah.
Any questions?
Well, that's all for me.
Okay, inshallah, we'll try and finish this up tomorrow and then go on to the recap of the kitab itself, inshallah. Jazakallah khair. سبحان الله وبحمده سبحانك اللهم وبحمدك نشهد أن لا إله إلا أنت نستغفرك ونتوب إليك. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته.
وعليكم السلام.